Hey everyone, this is John Feneck with the Feneck Commodities Report. With me today is my partner in crime, Don Durrett from goldstockdata.com. Don, how's it going today?
Excellent. I'm ready to do another one.
Great. So, just standard disclaimer, Don and I have a show on the Feneck Commodities Report. We're doing stuff now. This is our second show on Investor TV. We may own stock in any of the names that we talk about. Today, we're talking about Sonoro Gold, which is SMOFF in the US and SGO in Canada. Really interesting opportunity in Mexico, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Ken MacLeod is standing by, and he will be joining us in about 15 to 20 minutes. But first, Don, let's talk a little macro. There's a lot to unpack with the election just coming in literally hours ago, Trump victory. Obviously the gold and silver market sold off today, but what I was telling my investors was look at the US dollar. It started up, up 1.7% to open today. I mean, that is going to present a headwind to anything in gold and silver historically, that kind of a big move. And I think this was more of a risk on day than, hey, gold and silver are done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the Trump victory was the reason why the stock market has been so strong in November, is the expectation he was going to win. Because if Trump does win, then the odds are that he's not going to raise taxes. So your capital gains will stay low, your income tax will stay low where it's currently at, and there's a probability we'll cut taxes. And then after he won, of course, we had this big jump today because of that, the follow through there. And now there's a very good chance if they get control of the House, then we're going to get a tax cut of some type.
Mhm.
I don't know what type of cut, but that's the modus operandi generally of the conservatives. Definitely no raises for the next probably 4 years, and probably cuts. So that's all positive for the economy. Plus, we're going to get some less regulations, and we're probably going to get some type of stimulus in some regards for the economy of some regard. And so that's one of the reasons why gold dropped today. Gold dropped today exactly because the dollar went up. Absolutely, that's a big reason. But I think another reason is the expectation of a soft landing or a no landing scenario where you don't need gold because the economy's doing good. But now let's look at where we're going. So I think there's going to be a delay before we get this recession correction. Nothing, I don't think nothing in November. But does the stock market stay up all the way until the inauguration? So do we get through December and January without the stock market correction? And that's kind of a big unknown. I don't think so, but I'm guessing. I'm thinking that this thing might turn downward before Trump actually comes in, before Trump actually takes over. And then Trump's going to be behind the eight ball. And then, the Fed's going to keep cutting, but then you're going to start having weakness in the bond market. I think the real issue here is, Trump's going to have a really hard time getting the fiscal house in order with a budget deficit. And then simultaneously to that, he's going to have a really hard time fixing the bond market. How does the bond market maintain its strength when it's borrowing $200 billion every single month? I still think the bond market is really why gold is not going to crash. Why gold is actually going to trend higher next year is because the bond market is not going to be able to be this solid, thing that everybody's going to rely on. I think Luke Gromen, his latest one with Adam Taggart, is really good. And he basically says that they've lost the long end, and that basically the 10-year is not going to go down below 4%, probably. It's probably is going to stay high and then go up, because then inflation is going to come back. And so the long end, nobody's going to want to buy bonds, 10, 20s, and 30s, and they're going to stick with the low end. But the bond market, in my opinion, is going to become more fragile over time, and that fragility is going to put a floor under gold. I don't think we're going below 2,400. That's kind of my floor here. I just think that the bond market is going to put a floor under gold and then push it higher. And and the only time we're even going to go down to 2,400 is when the recession finally arrives. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Excellent assessment. I feel similarly. I feel probably that 2,300 is more of my floor. because that was sort of what was holding in weeks past. It wouldn't surprise me to see a retracement to that number, but it would also not surprise me to see higher lows being made, like you're suggesting, because gold is just doing well for a number of reasons right now. One of which we haven't really discussed on. You know, you and I just were speakers at my conference in Four Seasons, Fort Lauderdale, just 2 weeks ago, and you did a great job there. But we didn't have time to touch on the BRICS. What do you think the news October 22nd through 24th, where the BRICS is clearly developing an alternative currency to the U.S. dollar and the euro, which hasn't really been formally announced yet, but I mean it's sort of like in the wings. What do you think that would that impact would have in a Trump in a Trump world now? Obviously, some of these countries that make up the BRICS are not really on Trump's wish list and friendlies.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. So I firmly believe that the reason why the bond market is fragile, I didn't really even say why it was fragile. I said that the fiscal house is kind of out of order, right? The budget deficit, I mentioned that. But even more so than that, it's who's buying the bonds. So if you have to borrow 200 billion a month, you want foreigners to be buying those bonds. Now, foreign ownership of bonds has dropped all the way to 20%. They're not buying them. It keeps going down. If you look at the chart, it was at 30 and it just keeps going down, down, down. I think it's at 22 now. It's trending lower. And so the foreigners are not buying our bonds. And ironically, some of those foreigners, in my opinion, that are buying them is actually us. Because if we look at the Cayman Islands and if you look at Belgium, it's like, okay, these buyers, I think some of those buyers is actually like the Fed. They have a bank account over there. In other words, they're hiding it. I think that's a possibility, conspiracy theory, of course. But you're right. The BRICS create, in my opinion, fragility in the bond market. Simultaneous to that, they're actually buying gold. So it's a two-pronged whammy on the bond market, because the more that they buy gold instead of treasuries as reserves, so they can hold treasuries on their balance sheet, or they can hold gold. And so the more gold they put on their balance sheet, it's actually, I don't need your stinking bonds. I don't want them. I'm going to sell your bonds. I'm going to buy gold. So I think the BRICS is a huge issue here for the bond market. It's huge. And you're talking about, 40% GDP or BRICS now. It's massive. And so if those
so I guess the investor out there is asking, why isn't there more like media coverage of something so significant?
Well, first of all, the media coverage in the US is basically very manipulative and very deceptive as far as the economy goes, because it's all based in New York. All your cable business is all in New York, and they're basically talking their book. I mean, if you watch the cable news shows, they're all bullish, bullish, bullish. And the bearish guys, the Peter Schiffs, they get on once in a while, like once a quarter. They don't get on every day. But the other guys get on every single day. The bulls get on every single day.
That's a good point.
And so they're manipulating it. They're not talking about the negatives. The guys that come on maybe once a month, they'll throw a bear in there once a month or something, but they get marginalized. And so they're not telling the whole story. In my opinion, New York, those financial news networks are very deceptive. For instance, they say that the economy is strong. You hear that all the time on the cable news net. The economy is strong, the consumer is strong. Well, that's BS, because if you look at earnings on the S&P 500, last quarter, 493 net. If you added up their net earnings, and we had a strong economy, right? 493 out of the 500, it was net negative.
Right. We've talked about that a lot on our shows.
All the earnings was in 7 companies. That's not a strong economy. Then if you look at the banking sector is like the foundation of the economy. The banking sector, they keep having more write-offs because they're having delinquencies. They're having commercial real estate problems. They have their credit card write-offs. Banking system's not doing great right now. Commercial real estate is a big problem. Empty buildings, a big problem. The consumer is supposed to be 70% of spending is consumer. I would say that 50% 50% of families right now cannot pay their bills. It's not a strong economy. The only thing that's strong is GDP's up because we have a $2 trillion deficit that gets counted, and also the stock market is an all-time high. Wall Street thinks that the stock market is the economy, but it's not, because the stock market can be overvalued, which is an illusion. If a stock market's in a bubble, it doesn't mean the economy is strong. So the economy is not strong. We could go in. I firmly believe that we're going to have a hard landing, and it's not going to take much to get there. And when we get there, everybody's going to go, "How did this happen? We had a strong economy." So I'll
Yeah.
end it
So
there.
let me point out some of the things that you didn't mention there about the economy. November 1st, we had a terrible non-farm payrolls read, which I think really helped Trump, don't you? I
Exactly.
mean, that was like, hey, we can't hide how bad this is anymore. And it was literally right before the election. That didn't help Harris at all. And she said, well, hey, when I'm president in December, we'll talk about it, or some ridiculous comment. Is like, the numbers in non-farm payrolls, I think, are very significant in that they've been trending downward for months. And people don't seem to understand this, with the S&P making all-time highs, Bitcoin cranking. Like, it's just a very weird period of history right now economically. Also, ISM manufacturing hit a 13-month low on Friday, which again, no one cares, but these are important factors that, should be being, some investors should really care about this, because when you are making your case for a recession, these are all the things that contribute to a recessionary environment, don't they?
Yes. Also, full-time jobs. You talk about jobs, the employment numbers, non-farm payrolls. If you go and you look at full-time jobs for the last 12 months, they've been trending down for the entire 12 months.
Hmm.
Most of the jobs that have been added have been part-time jobs, all the growth for the last 12 months, and it's still trending lower. Like I said, the non-farm payrolls for last month was the worst one we've had this year.
Right.
The other thing I would point out as far as the economy goes is our corporations in the Fortune 500, but those Fortune 500, they get 40% of their earnings internationally. Our corporations they're not just based in the US, they're international. 40% of their earnings are international. Well, Europe is not growing and Asia isn't growing. And so where are these corporations getting their earnings? So it's not just our economy, but the international economy is weak as well, and that's hurting our economy. Because if a corporation isn't making money in foreign markets, then they're going to cut back their spending here. And so there's no engine there. I always say, where's the green shoots? There's no green shoots internationally. There's none here. The only green shoots we have is they're cutting rates. But it will take more than a year to cut rates low enough to have an impact. If you cut rates from 5.5 to 4.5, you cut them 1%, it has very marginal impact.
Yes.
It's going to take more than a year. So they just started in September. It's going to take more than a year before to even have an impact. Before that year is up, I think Trump's going to run into a recession. I think Trump's going to go, "What in the heck did you just give me, Mr. Biden?" I think that's what's good. And I think Trump's going to be complaining about what landed in his lap. But
Right.
because I think I'm just guessing, but I think by springtime we're in a recession here, and Trump's trying to find a way to get out of it.
Right. Which would the note that I put out pre-market to clients today was, don't despair that you're seeing this short-term, very, very reactionary environment in gold and silver today. This is a buying opportunity for some of your favorite names. I pointed out Pan American, PAAS, right? After the bell yesterday, they beat by 12 cents, had a great quarter, and the stock ran to 24 plus. And then this morning it opened at 2075. I mean, you know, unbelievable, right? And so at 22, I basically put a note out and said, this is ridiculous. Like, you have to, if you like silver, you have to buy this. This is a great quarter. And like, this is really positive. And sometimes you just have to suck it up and hold your nose and buy it, right? Like, and that's sort of one of those names that I think people will look at in 2 years and say, wow, this was like such an easy double in the low 20s, versus, some other investments. I always compare things to current time because looking in the
Right.
past helps us. But really, like if you're looking at the market right now as an investor, or some of the listeners right now, if you buy Tesla, will that double in 2 years? I don't think so. I could be wrong. Will Apple double? I don't think so. I could be wrong. I think some of these names like Newmont at 44, Pan American at 2075, they could double in the next 2 years based on what you're talking about, Don. If we have more rate cuts going into next year, clearly we're getting one tomorrow. Clearly, the December 19th is on the table. Q1 is on the table, right? Like, I mean, you can see a path as an investor that the Fed is going to be more accommodative, in my opinion. And I think that Trump is going to make it more accommodative. He's already proven that he can control the Supreme Court. Why couldn't he control the Fed?
I I firmly believe that gold's going to $4,000. I don't think that the government can get a hold of their fiscal house, their fiscal order, get the balance sheet back in order. I don't think they can do it. Now, I'm a speculator. I'm betting that they fail. That basically that they can't get it in order and they have to do some type of a reset. But all we need is fragility. We don't need it to fail. For gold to trend to $4,000, which is my target, we don't need it to fail. All we need is for investors to become nervous and buy gold. That's all we need. Is we just need uncertainty. And so if you get the combination of a recession, remember we've had a 15-year bull market. I think that we're going to get a 2 to 4 year recession, at least 2 years. The last one lasted 9 months. In 2008, it lasted 9 months. I think this one's going to
Right.
last 2 to 4 years. And
Wow.
once it starts, and when it begins, that's going to create uncertainty. And so this time, this is going to be the first recession ever in the history of this country where you're going to get a recession when the bond market is fragile. And
Mhm.
so where do you run to? You're not going to be able to run to long bonds, I don't believe. You're going to run to short bonds, but how comfortable are you going to be with those short bonds? And the other place that you've been able to run to historically is dollars. Are you going to be comfortable with those if inflation's at 4% or higher? You're probably not. So money market funds is another one. So if the banking system is no longer solid as a rock, let's say that we have a few bank failures and they can't bail them out. If the banking system becomes fragile, then the money market funds become fragile. So where do you run to? So gold is going to be that one place you can run to it. You can also run to Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's at 75,000 a day. I mean, I've always been I've been pro Bitcoin since sub $1,000. I think Bitcoin is gonna hang around, and it's going to be it's got that it's similar to gold where it doesn't have that unencumbered risk that you have everywhere else.
Mhm.
And so these are the only places you're going to run to. Now back to Pan American. If gold's going to 4,000, I really believe the GSR is going to squeeze down to 40. That's $100 silver. We got to 39 in 2011. There's no reason we can't get back to 39. So
Okay,
that's
so
100.
let's just to clarify, Don, for people, GSR is the gold to silver ratio, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so
So
gold, the price of gold, an ounce of gold
4,000,
divided by an ounce of silver, and that currently is very, very high, right? Like we're talking, I haven't looked
85.
today, but 80, 85, yeah. So you're thinking
Yeah.
40 is a possibility. I've been saying like 60 more because I just, I mean, in the near term, because I don't see it just going crazy silver. Like I hope
Oh,
so. I hope I'm wrong.
it,
I have a 9% position
it,
in silver, so I would love to see that. But I think that we're going to have to get through. Clearly, we just saw resistance at 35, right? So
yeah.
38 and then 40 and then 50. So it's sort of like going to be a process, but it's going to be achievable.
Yeah. So I actually think that it'll squeeze to 60 really quickly. It'll go 85, it'll because gold's going to rip to 50. It'll go from 30. If you look at the technical chart of silver, once you get above $35, there's really nothing to prevent it from going to an all-time high. So you're going to get this rip from 35 to 50. When that happens, the GSR will shrink to 60, just like that. Boom.
Yeah, yeah,
You're at
that's what
60.
we've been saying.
So,
And like you had
yeah.
pointed out, I mean, 40 is possible. I mean, gosh, I mean, these silver stocks right now are so cheap. If this scenario plays out, I mean, it's just unbelievable. They got absolutely smoked again today. So there's just a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity for investors, and we'd love to talk a little bit more about that. But right now I think we need to pause on the macro side and bring in
Sure.
Ken MacLeod and John Darch from Sonoro Gold. This is one of the names that was at our conference back in October, and Don got the opportunity to meet with them, and so did I. So if we could have Ken and John come on, that would be great.
There we are. Good to
How
talk to
are
both
you?
of you. Lovely to see you both again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back, John Darch.
Thanks, guys,
Thanks,
for being
thanks, Ken and John. So we're happy to have you, and we'd love to hear, the current update from Sonoro's perspective. There's obviously been a lot of things that have happened in Mexico with Sheinbaum coming into power, and I know both of you are bullish the stock right now. Could you tell us for 10 minutes here, just an overview on Sonoro, a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll ask some questions.
Well, I believe that October the 1st was the watershed date for Sonoro when President Sheinbaum was inaugurated. And the change in the attitude of the Mexican government towards the miners has now shifted dramatically. We've gone from a 6-year deep freeze under the previous administration to a new regime of dialogue, consultation, and an interest in moving forward with the mining companies, and also an interest in expanding foreign investment into the sector as well. So we believe that in the next year, 2025, will be the banner year for Sonoro, because we are waiting for the environmental impact statement to be approved by SEMARNAT, the environmental agency. And the catalyst for that will be the new government giving the go-ahead to the SEMARNAT to be able to go ahead and approve these mining projects that have been held up. And we've been held up for over 2 years. We've gone through the environmental review. And so we believe that 2025 is going to be our year. And probably in the first half of the year, we should be looking at getting the permit and then start the construction.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about, how Sonoro started and where, what kind of reports exist for shareholders to view right now? I know that you just commented, Ken, that you've had like a 2-year kind of overhang, like so many mining companies in Mexico, but it would be good for people to know, where you are in terms of how close you are to production, and do you have, 43101 or a PEA or what have you?
Yeah, the modern era for Sonoro started in around early 2018 when we acquired the Cerro Caliche project. Prior to that time, we have another project called San Marcial. It's drill ready, but it has a similar kind of potential to the Cerro Caliche project. But we've been focusing on Cerro Caliche because we believe that it has a potential for 2 million ounces. And since 2018, we have a total of 55,000 meters of drilling, which has identified a resource within the pit shells right now of 440,000 ounces, which provides us with a mine plan for a 9-year life of mine on the basis of 11,000 tons per day on an open pit mine basis, and which yields 33,000 net ounces of gold per year. So on that basis, we've designed the mine plan to be flexible, so that once we get into production, the idea is that we will divert some of the cash flow into additional drilling and demonstrate the potential of 2 million ounces over a period of time. So less than 30% of the known mineralized resources on the property have been drilled and assayed to date. But the other 70% has been identified as being mineralized due to surface work, surface sampling and mapping. So it behooves us as soon as possible, and once we have cash flow, to get into that drilling program and realize upon the full potential. And so we're at this point right now where we're ready to go back to SEMARNAT, the environmental agency in Mexico City, and go ahead and get the final approval, because we went through the process of the review process back in 2022. We went through the question and answer period. We've satisfied all of the questions that they had. And so realistically right now, it should not be a hardship for us to secure the environmental permit approval for building the mine in the next few months.
Okay. Can you tell us what state in Mexico the project resides in, and how does that compare to other parts of Mexico?
Oh, I think we're in the best state in all of Mexico for permitting a mining project, and especially a gold project. Sonora State produces over 30% of the gold that's produced in Mexico. It's the number one producer for gold in Mexico. 25% of the GDP of Sonora State is reliant on the mining sector. So here we have a situation where over the past 6 years, there's been no new open pit mines. And of course, open pit mining in Sonora State and in Mexico in general is as much as 70% of all mining. So having had a bit of a de facto freeze from the previous administration on new mines and new open pit mines, we're sitting in a situation in Sonora State where, with no new mines opening in the past few years, the economy is bound to take a hit at some point, because once we deplete the existing mines, what do you have to replace it with? Well, the governor of Sonora State is very much in favor of the mining industry. He wants the economy to succeed, and he needs the approvals for the mines that have been held up over the past few years. He needs the approval for those that they be built, so we can replenish the supply of gold going into the future. And we know very right now there's at least 7 projects that I could probably name to you today that have been sitting on the sidelines for at least couple of years, maybe some of them even longer, waiting for the approvals process. So we're not being singled out. We are one of a basket of really important projects for the state of Sonora. And so the government of Sonora is our greatest cheerleader, because they want to get the approvals done ASAP.
So, John,
Okay.
can I speak maybe to what makes Sonora distinctive and put together a few things which is maybe not apparent? Sonora is quite distinctive in the junior mining sector. I can't use the word unique because I'm sure there's another one like us, but we do have 5 essential components of a junior company to make us successful. And what makes us stand out from the other junior companies? Number one is the team, the project, there's the business plan, the capital structure, and also obviously access to funding. Now, as to the team, each of the members here are complementary in terms of their disciplines: geology, engineering, mining, and financing, etc. Each with some 45 years experience. Successes: identification, development, production, or sale. We've come together for this one project. Even though we've known each other for decades, this one project, this is the only company. And our confidence in the company is reflected by the fact that we own 25% of the issued shares. Our cost is about 15 cents a share. And in addition to that, we have loaned the company some $3.6 million. Unsecured, no terms of repayment, expectation that it will be repaid when we get our project financing or going into production. That's stated clearly in our chairman's letter. Now, as to why that money's been advanced, it has to go back to our business plan. When we started this and I joined the company, clearly the objective was to get to production as soon as possible, generate cash flow. Hence, we only drilled sufficient to go to production, knowing that we could take it to production by ourselves. And that's the key thing. That was the point where we stopped. And so we developed a business plan which dictated when we would stop drilling. So what we see now is just a third of what we believe is to be there. The important part, I think, is that we had arranged project financing to take us through to production. But then when the issue arose in Mexico, we as the insiders decided that we would fund the company in order to maintain the property payments to avoid there being any unnecessary dilution to the shareholders. Now, mentioned further, because it's very important, we have a very strong European shareholder base. The German shareholders and the Swiss shareholders are very, very supportive of us. They've been with our previous projects. They've joined us in this one here. And as we move forward and we require funding, they come to the table. We do non-brokered financings, and what they may not put up, we put up ourselves. So there's a strong commitment from the company to do so.
Okay, thanks, John. Did I hear you correctly that about 25% of the float is at an average is owned by management at an average cost of around 15 cents Canadian?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So I did look at the cap structure. So it looks like 270 million shares fully diluted, about 63.7 million warrants. Can you, if you don't have this information, no big deal, but can you give us an idea about the warrants themselves in terms of what the pricing may be?
Certainly, the warrants are priced between 7 cents and 15 cents.
Okay.
And this was done as a necessity during the dark summer months when there was no love for gold stocks. And in particular, when there was this view that Mexico was going to ban open pit mining. And we have to thank the media for not stating correctly what the president said. It was a proposal to ban it. But of course, all the media said open pit mining has been banned. That had that natural reaction for people to get nervous and say this is never going to go ahead. So we had to go through that summer period where there was no support. So we had this need to fund operations, maintain property payments, keep people going, etc. And so we offered it to the shareholders to come in, participate, and we had to do it in the context of the market. But the material thing, John and Don, is that October the 1st, when Ken and I were in Sweden, when it became very clear that this proposed ban was never going to happen, immediately we saw an improvement in the price of our shares. We traded, I think, maybe 10 million shares, and we had a good run. And what we're particularly happy with is the fact that it did not spike. It progressively moved up and consolidated. We traded something like 2 million shares at 10 cents over 2 days, and it's fell back a bit in the last couple of days. We've traded maybe a million shares the last 2 days, and it's off 1 cent. But to me, we're quite happy with that. I think in the circumstances, with the election, with sentiment, that we've been able to show good stability in our share price.
And I think as well, John, if I may add to that, the issue of the proposed ban on open pit mining in the future has essentially been removed. It was in the pledges from the previous administration that they would visit that at some point. But when Sheinbaum became president on October the 1st, the first thing she did was she updated the 100-point pledge to the Mexican people. And the notable by its absence was the fact no mention made of proposed future ban on open pit mining. It's gone. It's history. We don't believe it'll ever resurface. So we're working on the premise now that we're pushing full speed ahead to get the approval to build the mine over the coming months.
That's a good point, Ken. Thank you. Don, let me turn it over to you. I don't want to monopolize all the questions here.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, I met with John and Ken, Fort Lauderdale. Really enjoyed speaking to both of them, getting the insight. And then I did another talk to them, a Zoom meeting. So I understand the situation well. So I want to there's a lot of information here that they didn't bring up that I know that I want to share with people that are watching. So it looks like there's a very good chance that this will get permitted in 2025. The capex is low. They had it, the PEA, they had it at 15, but they're probably going to need 20 million. But $20 million is pretty low for getting into production and being a gold miner. So they have 440,000 ounces at 0.45. The grade isn't fantastic, but it's not super low. The AISC is $1,400, so it's not low, but it's not high either. It's going to generate a lot of free cash flow. But it's going to grow in size based on their drill holes. They've drilled 55,000 meters, so it's going to expand very quickly to 700,000 ounces. So even though it's 440, it's really 700. Plus, as they said, it's mineralized. It's going to grow. This is going to be a 1 million plus deposit, very likely 1.5 to 2 million. And you're buying it today at $13 million. So they're really being very demure here on the value of this company. It's 20 plus bagger potential all day long at $3,000 gold. Now, it's trading at 7 cents Canadian, 5 cents US. So it's just super, super cheap. I think this thing's going to expand. So they're going to start out at 33,000 ounces. I think I'm not going to ask you guys a question yet. I'm going to keep speaking and then we'll ask one. So, because I want to get this out. So, but I think it's going to expand to at least 50,000 ounces a year. And very likely this thing's going to go to 75,000 ounces a year. So if I just value this at 50,000 ounces a year, it's 20 plus bagger. I really only have one question for them, really. And because like everything I said, I mean, it looks like they're going, it's less than a 1 year build. So once they get their payment in 2025, you're looking at production in 2026. This thing's going to be generating a ton of free cash flow versus what their current market cap is, $13 million. So there's really the only question, and this is the only question I asked them last time I did a Zoom question. And for me, there's no red flags on this thing other than, where are you going to get the $20 million? How are you going to get it?
We have several opportunities which are facing us now. We're not going back to the former lender, but other parties have come to us with proposals, and the proposals range from debt, gold loans, potentially a royalty, which we're not particularly interested in. So I would say, without giving any inside information, we have various options, all of which are really quite attractive. And the points that you've raised on, I have no disagreement with any of those. And maybe one of the areas that we've not done a lot on is sort of high promotion. And that's because we've always focused us and believed in ourselves as being business people, to be judged on our integrity. And the reason we have such loyal shareholders over in Europe is because they know if we come up against an issue where we need funding, the insiders are not shy of putting up the money. And in an earlier discussion we had today, well, did you grant yourself warrants for that? What special concessions did you get for it? We said none. They said, what you mean, just unsecured loans, no repayment terms? We said yes. And the fact is, we are significant shareholders. We have 24 or 25% of the shares. Why screw it up for all shareholders? And to get to another issue, it's not our proposal to roll it back.
Right.
So that's really all we can add to your comment there, Don.
And if I can add a little bit more to your comment as well, Don. Sorry, Don. I just want to emphasize that the PEA that we produced was based upon $1,800 gold. And it gave us a $72 million net present value before tax. And of course, since we're plowing profits back into the expansion of the mine into the future, we're going to be deferring taxes for years to come. So on the basis of $1,800 gold going to $2,000 gold, the increase in net present value was very, very close to $50 million. So for every $200 increase, you add another $50 million potential value to the net present value to the project. So you can work out the math that whether it be $2,400 or $2,800, it's significantly higher than what is reflected in the PEA.
The valuation is amazing. You get it permitted in 25 and you get it financed in 25. This thing is just a total slam dunk. I love it. I don't see how this doesn't work because I don't see gold crashing. Now, last time I was with you guys, I said I was going to wait for the election before I bought your shares, but the election's over. I'm going to put in a order. I'm buying your shares tomorrow because I think this thing's a slam dunk 5-bagger with 10+ bagger potential, and that's my personal sweet spot. If I can find a development story like that, especially a near term construction type of project, I love those. So yeah, this thing's right up my alley. And I'm just gonna. The one thing there really isn't like. At that show in Fort Lauderdale, when I did my presentation, I showed in developers, I showed you all my check boxes, right? You guys check all the boxes. There's nothing that's missing there. I'm very excited about it. I think you guys have a home run. I think your shareholders are going to be very happy. Like you guys bought it 15 cents Canadian. Today it's trading at 7. So you're still going to make a lot of money. I guess I have one final question. It looks like you guys are going to do a financing. And so, have you guys made any further decisions? You said you're going to probably raise about $500,000 here in the next month. Do you have any comments on that?
We're depending on the market. One of the good things and unusual about a company is that we can finance it ourselves to get us through the dark time. So it's not a matter of we have to do it. And that's one of the great comforts I think that a lot of our shareholders have over in Europe is knowing that not only do we have a significant position of the company, but we're never shy to put up money to make sure everything works well. And I think history will show we've never tried to take advantage of everybody. And another important feature, which maybe is a little bit off topic, but we always look to the community. what we can do with the community. And we always want to leave the community in a better position than what we found before. So when we hear about GSM, what should be taken care of, we've done that naturally. We have a great relationship with all the local people there. And so we feel that, use the word like hiding in plain sight, we're here. This is who we are. We don't have outrageous promotions. We don't have people banging on the desk saying you must buy. We just like to get the story out there and let it grow. And the way the share price has moved up has been good for us.
Right. The other thing I want to make a comment on is both of you guys have a ton of experience, and you guys kind of came together. You're like friends. You've known each other, and you've done other projects separately, and you basically came together and said, "Hey, let's do this." And you're using it. In some respects, it's kind of a final deal for you guys. I mean, you guys are both near retirement, and you're like, okay, let's do this project. It's a slam dunk. It's going to work. And I think it's a really good story as a friendship thing. I mean, between you two guys, I mean, it's pretty unusual for, people to be able to, come together. I'd love to work with, two friends going out and build a thing. Like John's the chairman and Ken's the CEO, and they work together hand in hand. It's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, we've known each other for some 40 years. My background is very briefly in banking in the UK, then Canada, started Asia Pacific Resources. That did extremely well. The crew did extremely well. That's what enabled us to build a good European base. Ken, as you heard, had a similar background. So we were friends, but we never worked together. And it was only, I left the company sort of to go into retirement to help a hill tribe in northern Thailand. That's another story. That was a voluntary thing. And Ken approached me in the tail end of 2018 and he said, this company you're doing is going well. I said, well, I've just sold. He said, why don't you be a consultant to Sonoro Gold? And I said, hey, Ken, you know me, I don't get half pregnant. He said, in that case, we'll be the chairman. And I said, well, that's okay. Where can I get stock? He said, you do everybody else. You buy the stock. So I ended up building my position through the market, through private placements, etc. And then when I came in, all the people I knew came in, and we have that great history over in Europe. And that's how we started. And it's gone well. And one of the good things I find over there, gentlemen, is that you tell the Europeans that you have an issue, 99% of them listen, understand, and say, we understand. It's not just panicking.
So I interview a lot of companies, talk to a lot of companies. The difference between you guys aren't deal makers at all. You guys are businessmen, but you guys, you do it right. You have a lot of integrity. You've been doing this for 45 years. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of different things. I respect both of you guys. I think it's going to work. That, people is a big thing in this business. You want to work with people, and in gold and silver miners, it's amazing on how many of these companies, they're deal makers. They're like, if somebody makes me an offer for my company, they'll take it. It's like, you're going to write me a check? Oh, sure, I'll take it. And they'll move on, right? They're just deal makers. But you guys are shareholder focused. Mm-hmm. The insiders are high. You guys are in this for the long term. If somebody comes and offers you, $100 million for a company, you're like, it's a great offer, but we really don't want to part ways. We want to build this thing. It's too early, right? You want to see if it's got 2 million ounces.
We have that advantage that we can do it ourselves. We have done it in the past with various projects, and I'm absolutely delighted that we have Mel and Huri and, of course, my good friend Ken, that we can come together here. And there's no self here. It's always us. What can we do for the company? Not one person has said, oh, for me, I want this, I want that. Everybody puts up their own share of the money. And I would say that one of the common denominators we have is we enjoy making money, but we enjoy how we spend it responsibly. Right. And that's where John's aware of that sort of private venture I had to help a hill tribe in northern Thailand with $5 million of my own money. And that was just purely to assist a community who couldn't help themselves. And I think that flows back in now to where we are in Mexico. We look at the community. What can we do to help the community? We want to share the wealth. We want a win-win situation. And we've had proposals which have been, well, why don't you roll the stock back? We say, why? Well, you roll it back and then we can issue yourself some more options. I said, we don't have any options. So, why would it want to screw everybody just to make a few extra dollars? It doesn't make sense.
And my closing advice to any potential investors looking at us right now would be, look what the insiders are doing. The top four management in the company. We've loaned the company $3.8 million. The degree of confidence we have that we will get the approval on the environmental impact statement in the near future is 100%. Otherwise, we wouldn't be putting up that money. We continue to put up the money in order to make sure that the operation is successful and thrives and is not interrupted. And also the property payments are made. And that's the important thing. We have protected the company over the past 2 years of really trying times. And not once have we looked back and said, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. No, we are intent on getting the company successful and building this mine and building up the resource to the point where if it's a 2 million ounce potential, let us prove it up. Then at that point, if somebody wants to take a run at us, I'm happy to accommodate.
All right. Yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Ken and John. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And Don and I will just take another, 5 or so minutes now to kind of summarize for investors what was just presented.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you, guys. So, Don, let's talk a little bit about the project. You had mentioned you think it might be 20 million in capex. I always like to talk about the negative things first, get that out of the way. So you think it might be 20 million on the capex instead of 15, as stated in a outdated PEA. However, as Ken pointed out, the PEA is also factoring in.
That's from the 20 million is actually from them. They told us that's what it's going to be.
Okay, that's even better.
That's a recent number. Recent number.
Yeah, which, by the way, I mean, when you look at projects out there, most of them are, the ones that I'm tracking at least, are 150 to 300 million, not 20 million. So I think the capex is very manageable. But as Ken pointed out, looking at, as so many companies have pointed out, like if you look at when their PEA was constructed, it was at $1,800 gold. And obviously we're at 26 something right now, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable in terms of the possible net present value of a project like this. I think it could be much, much bigger than people expect. And as they pointed out, that EIS that they're waiting on, that's probably, in our view, probably like March as sort of like the worst case scenario. We probably should know by March 31st where they stand on that. And then I asked them at the conference, okay, once you get the permits in hand and you're ready to go, how many months do you need? And they told me 10 to 12 months. So, if you're looking at that math, you're looking at early 2026 in production. Like, that's what's really exciting, I think, about this one, don't you?
There's a lot of positives on this project. The fact that it has a low capex, has a really high IRR, has a 1 year payback, 1 year. So it's going to be easy for them to raise money. I think they're going to probably borrow 10 to 15 million. I'm hoping to borrow 5 million gold loan and then 5 million for equity. But I would expect them to do 5 million for equity. But I think this project is fairly easy to finance. The thing I like about it is the upside. It's like a 20 bagger plus, because they could get to 75,000 ounces a year. If they get to 1.5 million ounces, and I think they will, that's at least 75 a year. It's open pit. It's easy to build. It's easy to mine. I mean, there really isn't any red flags on this as far as 10 bagger potential. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to buy it tomorrow. I'm going to basically put in a 7 cent US, currently trading at 5 cents US, but you got to pay a premium. So I'll put in 7 cents US and hope it fills. And I think it will fill at 7 cents. These guys paid 10 cents US. So 15 cents Canadian.
Right.
I'm getting it for 30% less than they paid. I feel like I'm stealing it. And so great bargain, right? And I see that. I just see this project working. I really don't see any red flags. I really don't. I think the management team is solid. I don't think they're going to sell it. I think they're long termers. The only thing that I didn't ask them that I just hope that because they're older guys, I don't know how aggressive these guys are going to be as far as like going out and building a second mine. Are they going to build a second mine? I don't know. I mean, these guys really, I think both of them are going to retire within 5 years. You can see, I mean, I'm 64
Sure.
and these guys are older than me. I mean, these guys are really nearing the retirement age. So
Well,
I think
true, but
this is the last rodeo. And,
yep.
but they could bring in some new fresh blood and maybe build this company and maybe do an acquisition.
Right. And I think one of the things that you had pointed out about, you know, screens that you have, we have the same type of screens, and our first screen is management. And John and Ken have been extremely communicative with me and my team for over a year now. I mean, every single time there's a question or an email, they're on it within 24 hours. I mean, it's very, very nice to see, because Don, you and I have talked off camera about this, how many juniors we've approached that say, hey, we're big shareholders, we'd love to have you on our show. We get, crickets. It's unbelievable to me that this continues to happen at 2,800 gold and now 2,675 gold, but it's just a real problem, right? It's like communication is key
Yeah.
with investors, and
These,
they are investor focused.
these guys have some of the highest integrity I've ever seen in this business. It's almost like they're like fish out of water. Their integrity is so high.
Well, thanks a lot, Don, for the comments and for obviously coming to the conference last month. It meant a lot to me. We're going to do that again next year at the Four Seasons Fort Lauderdale, May 11th through the 13th. We'd love to have any of our followers and listeners here. Join us if you're accredited and you want to learn more about companies like Sonoro Gold. We'd love to have you there, and you can just email me. You'll see my contact details here just coming up in a minute. And we'll try to get you into that conference. Lastly, Sonoro Gold, SMOFF is the US ticker, SGO is the Canadian ticker. Don, it's always been a pleasure for the last year and a half. Let's keep it going next month. And thanks again.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you later.
Thank you.